Welcome to the first Poet Q&A session exclusively for members of the Reddit Forum. Chairman and CEO Dr. Suresh Venkatesan will be answering questions submitted by investors as Poet continues its progress towards volume production of products based on its Optical Interposer platform. Suresh, thanks for taking the time to be here.
Oh, thank you so much, Adrian. And I'm happy to be here to hear from our investors. I definitely value their contributions, and I especially like that we might be reaching a new audience. I look forward to hearing what's on your mind and to giving you information on the really exciting things that we've got going in our company and across our offices in North America as well as in Asia.
And my name is Adrian Bridgebassi. I'm an investor in Poet as well as a journalist who has followed the company's story. And now I also help with its communications and content initiatives. I'll be asking the questions provided by the Reddit community. We had dozens of questions and can't possibly get to them all today with Suresh. So what we've done is combine them where it made sense to do so. And for those questions not included, we'll be providing written answers. For those who may be new to the Poet technology story, a little background. The company, under Suresh's guidance, has developed a proprietary technology called the Poet Optical Interposer that merges electronic and optical components on a single semiconductor chip, eliminating numerous assembly steps which reduces cost and boosts performance. A suite of products has been built off of the Optical Interposer, and those products will provide greater data density and lower manufacturing costs in data communications for a range of verticals. Poet has accomplished what companies like Intel have not been able to do, and they've done it largely because of the decades of experience from the senior team led by Suresh. Poet is poised to be a leader in the photonics industry, which is an extremely hot high-tech sector for investors and is estimated to be a $1.2 trillion industry by 2030. Poet conservatively estimates it will be a $1 billion revenue-generating company within 5 to 7 years. Poet is headquartered in Toronto, Ontario, with operational offices in Allentown, Pennsylvania, Singapore, and Shenzhen, China. Last year, it launched a joint venture operation with the world's largest compound semiconductor company, Sinan IC, located in China. That facility is named Super Photonics and is assembling some products for the global market and some exclusively for the China market. All of this information and more is available on the Poet website, and we'll be discussing the Poet ecosystem during our talk today. Suresh, first of all, on behalf of all the investors in Poet, thank you for taking the time out of your busy and whirlwind schedule to address these questions. Poet's investor base is incredibly devoted, and I'm sure appreciative of the work you and the team have done. 2021 is winding down. The pandemic, according to many experts, is winding down in the months ahead. How are you feeling as Poet moves into what looks like a momentous 2022?
Oh, I sure hope the pandemic is winding down. It doesn't feel like that when I travel around the world. You know what? I feel confident. The team's confident. I've had a chance to now visit members of the team in Singapore, members of the team here in North America as well. It's great, how things are coming together. We still have challenges ahead of us. For me, I have seen throughout my career with new technology that the burden of proof is never complete, until something is ultimately manufactured. I've seen this in Freescale, Motorola, Global Foundries. I've introduced several technologies into the market, and some go really well, and others take a while to gestate. And I'm always aware of that. It's an outlook that keeps you grounded. And it's the nature of our industry. We keep having to convince all of the skeptics that this is a technology that we believe ultimately will win out and work. It's still a very conservative industry. And even though you might not think that, because it does require innovation to continue to grow, innovation is incremental. People have a cost reduction roadmap that is just basically, labor and volume driven rather than innovation driven, or at least, not dramatic innovation like the one that Poet's putting out there. So from that standpoint, we have work to do. We've got more wins to get. We're happy to have, 4 committed customers that we're working closely with today. We get into manufacturing, we win more customers, and the process of getting these wins is complex too. But I'm very confident that as we get more of these parts delivered at the beta and production levels of quality, that we'll be making believers out of a lot of people.
Yeah, and that's...
So we keep building momentum,
Yeah, and a key part of that momentum building is team building. And as you said, you've been traveling. You were in Singapore recently, and that was your first time there since the pandemic started. One of our first questions from the Reddit audience is about the operations in that country. What is the current state of POET's Singapore facility, and how is it evolving?
Yeah, when I left Singapore, it was early 2020. I think we just completed the sale of Denselight, October, November of 2019. We just, signed a lease in a new office. I mean, there's really nothing there. We had a couple of employees. So it was really great to go back after 2 years. The lab's completely built out. We've got a little over 15 people, on staff. Running complete operations for test, characterization, and reliability. So we've got a clean room set up, and that's what the Singapore operation does for us. We manufacture the interposers at Solterra, and those interposers get shipped to Singapore, and we do all of our characterization and test there before it goes to Super Photonics for assembly. We've grown to over 15 people. We run 2-shift operations 7 days a week. So there's a fair bit of productivity out of that small group of people. Honestly, I was actually touched in many ways with the sacrifices that team has had to go through these past couple of years. Here in the US, I've largely been working out of the house. There's not a requirement to go into the office, but for the team in Singapore, the story is different. I mean, they need to be at work. They need to be at the offices. They need to be at the labs. And without them being able to do that, we could not have made the progress we did. And these folks traveling to work, I mean, this was pre-vaccination, traveling trains, buses, they take a lot of risk. And that kind of commitment and sacrifice from the team is, something I'm really immensely grateful for. Because we would not be where we are today without that kind of sacrifice. And they do it because they believe that we're onto something great. They want to be part of a great story. And it's just great to have such a committed team. The volume of activity in Singapore continues to grow. We've got so many new projects. We've added, new products to our roadmap that we're executing on. And we've got a ramp in Solterra we're managing. We've got a ramp in Super Photonics we're managing at the same time. So transferring that knowledge, bringing up a new team. It's just a buzzing place. And in addition to that, we've signed an agreement with the National University of Singapore, and we're a founding member of a hybrid integration assembly center there. We've partially co-invested in that facility, but we've been able to leverage the university as well as the government to set up a state-of-the-art hybrid integration assembly site in Singapore that, we're going to be commissioning in January. And it's a, hybrid optoelectronics center that is going to be a critical piece of our prototyping plans next year for products that, are not directly applicable to, our joint venture in Super Photonics, like remote lasers, light bars for the AI market, etc. So we're happy to have that capability, funded by others, but used by POET in Singapore, and we're really looking forward to having that come up in Q1 of next year.
That's fabulous news and really exciting news that we can see the future taking shape now. And you mentioned Super Photonics. We have a few questions related to SPX. The investors essentially want to know what the production schedule is for the joint venture and how is the operation there growing.
Yeah, I mean, things are going well. Obviously the first and second tranches of investment are in. As we're committed are with our partners to invest over $25 million in capex, over the next couple of years. Of course, much of that investment comes from our partners. Yeah, we average a couple of calls a day with the team. There's a lot of collaboration. There's a lot of commitment from both sides. A lot of growing pains too. So, especially when you can't travel, right? We just can't travel into China, and that has been a challenge that we're working through. But the Super Photonics team, of course, adds a lot of experience and engineering talent themselves, sales as well. Yeah, so we expect production for the 100 gig, 200 gig CWDM4 to begin in Q3 2022. So beta samples by the end of the year, early Q1, per the plan we had. It's I know there's been some noise about, oh, you're moving schedules around. The reality is, we put schedules, we project schedules based on expected lead times, and they don't quite always pan out. And they're not technical challenges, but there are challenges in just getting everything completed and in the hands of customers. We've added a whole new product family to our roadmap, which is the entire LR4, and they all have to come together on a common mask set in the foundry. We just don't have the ability to just unilaterally focus on one or the other on their own independent roadmaps and timelines, because ultimately they do have to come together for productivity reasons. But we're largely, on track. So we will be in production in Super Photonics in Q2. We've got committed customers. They're expecting parts. We're starting to make our projections, of course, on wafer starts and volume. Super Photonics has placed additional POs for new tools to expand capacity. We're about 25 people now in Super Photonics. The lab's fully equipped. Just recently they've demonstrated and transferred the entire assembly capability, lasers plus photodetectors plus the test plus the fiber attach. So I think things are coming together. We're working a plan with them, and can't be more proud of the team. Can't be more proud of our global team. Including our operations in Shenzhen that have been very critical to bringing Super Photonics up as well.
So, Suresh, that's really fabulous, everything you've laid out about where the roadmap is, and I know we are mentioning that we're getting caught up with the global supply shortage. The question relates, I guess, to not only Super Photonics, but maybe globally, the operations. How many samples does POET have in customers' hands right now? These would be alpha and beta samples, and for how long will those customers have had those samples? I think what the investor is getting at is how much longer until you hear whether these customers have seen what POET samples can do and are ready to move forward with purchase orders.
Yeah, we have a list of customers, say about 10 of them that have had our alpha samples, and then we've got a whole list of customers that will be getting betas, because some customers would rather do that evaluation once than multiple times, especially since the story is different for different products. So on 100 gig CWDM, most of these customers have a path. So what we're providing is a cost reduction parallel path. And for them, they're going to keep doing what they're doing till such time as, they believe that there's value in conversion. So they're not going to take, multiple samples at multiple steps along the way. So for those customers, it's primarily beta samples that we would be delivering. We've got another group of customers that they don't have a path and they want to adopt the POET path as their primary path. Fiber top is one of them. And we've been obviously working with them very closely, and they've got a bunch of samples as well. I think the design win equation is different for different products, different for different customers, and different depending on their maturity. It's not as straightforward as, you give them a sample and then they sign a dotted line the next day. In many cases, it's that first sample is a proof that this thing can work. There's, ramp capabilities that beta brings. And so we do expect that we're going to convert some wins. The first wins we've got are largely people that, almost sight unseen decided that this was the path they wanted to take and made their commitments. For others, it's, it's a conversion. You're going to convert them from one way of doing business to a different way of doing business. And, whether that traction occurs at 100 gig, at 200 gig, we're still, feeling things out. Now that we have something, the conversations elevate to the roadmap, the conversations elevate to capacity, and all of those things have to come together. So I'm hopeful that we're going to be able to get additional customers engaged and validated in our platform. We haven't changed our plans relative to what we intend to do with Super Photonics. We've added our product portfolio on the roadmap with LR4 that we would probably talk about a bit later. The process can be either immediate or can take some time, and it's very difficult to predict. Based on our experience, my experience, Vivek's experience, we kind of put a trajectory of how we believe these conversions can occur. But it is unpredictable, especially with the holidays upon us. So that's kind of where we are. The samples are performing relative to expectations really, really well. We finished our DVTs where we operate at about 30% lower power than the competing solutions. We have eye margins that are best in class. So it's not a technical issue at this point, and we do believe we'll get to beta by the end of the year. We'll be sampling that in early Q1. I think definitely production is on schedule, right? Because we do have the committed customers we got to deliver to, and I think as that capacity is put in, and as the confidence builds that this new team can actually deliver everything they promise, then the conversation can change. As I said, at every given step, our bar keeps getting raised. Now it is, hey, it works great technically. Can you build this at some scale, right? So I think we're working our way there. I'm fairly confident. Like I said, we'll get there. The process is different for different customers.
Yeah, it's a steady step. Some of it, there are industry standards that have to take time to reach, for sure. And let's get into LR4. You're so excited about LR4, and one of our LR4, by the way, means long reach. I think it refers to connections of 10 kilometers. Can you explain where LR4 is used and why you believe that POET has an advantage in the market for LR4 devices?
Yeah, long reach is 10 kilometers. So LR4 is primarily used in the telecom side, right, as opposed to datacom, and or within inter data centers, not inside of a data center. So the volumes are less, but it's a growing market, primarily because of the 400 gig to 100 gig breakouts that are required in the networks. We believe we have an advantage because in this, in the CWDM space, if you will, there are competing technologies from an integration perspective. They may not be as cute and effective as what POET does, but Intel does have 100 gig CWDM using silicon photonics. People have done parallel communications, etc. LR is still being done the conventional way, lasers and submounts and lenses and isolators and, active alignment and so on. There has been really no push in the LR space to be integrated. So cost reductions in the LR space have trailed considerably relative to, what is typically on CWDM. And so we believe that, for us, the Interposer platform is equally effective at LR as opposed to CWDM. The cost structure doesn't change. And so we think we can garner higher margins and provide, and while still providing a significant benefit to the customers. So, it's an exciting market only because there is no precedence or competition that we see, at least today, right? And we're well poised to be able to deliver these unique combinations of transceiver engines in that space for the telecom guys.
That's great. And here's a question from Indiana, and I know you're a Purdue Boilermaker. So this comes from Bill Planey. Bill actually helps us out with some of the graphics we do on Twitter. And his question is: even if you can never discuss the names of your customers, will we ever get to hear a revenue projection before those revenues hit the books?
Well, I mean, I think depending on how our business grows. I mean, I wouldn't say never discuss the names of customers, but nevertheless, it is not customary for public companies to give long-term forecasts, so we will not be doing that. We have, of course, identified and quantified systematically, what the revenue trajectory would be. We have disclosed that for SPX, right? Because it's their revenue, it's the joint venture's revenue. But on the POET side as well, we're putting the business plan associated with POET's revenue is going to be in the markets that POET would serve, independent of the markets that the Super Photonics joint venture would serve. So it's really critical that we kind of level set a bit on what the joint venture is, the purpose for establishing it. First off, people don't engage unless you have a certain amount of scale. So the joint venture allows us, it gives us a ticket to play effectively, right? So it allows us to get in the doors of people because, we're not, we've got the capacity to be able to service them. But I think more importantly, it's teaming up with a company that has the reputation of this manufacturing scale, which we did with Sana and IC. And we set it up in China because, especially for the low end, 100, 200G, and even in the initial phases of 400G, the market's all in China. That's where predominantly the customers are. The high-end customers, so 400 FR4, 800 co-packaged optics, they're more global. But in the low end, it's primarily China. So, establishing the joint venture to access that market was really important for us. So how does the revenue situation play out? So SPX gets a revenue, and we, obviously POET benefits immensely from that. Because first of all, as they ramp volume, our technology and market acceptance is validated, right? And the ability to scale manufacturing is demonstrated. That opens the door across the board, for other products as well. POET, of course, plans to sell, 400 gig, 800 gig co-packaged optics and other remote lasing sources, et cetera, that are not really part of the JV. So that forms kind of POET revenue stream, as well as some non-recurring expenses that we can garner as a consequence of working with customers. But the value of Super Photonics is cash, right? It generates cash from operations that would be either dividend out to the company, but even more importantly, valuations in China are immense, right? 10, 20x revenue. So as Super Photonics starts generating revenue, the valuation of Super Photonics grows immensely. And, of course, POET would own half the joint venture. So it's really important to know that our share of the JV and the value of that increases dramatically as SPX starts hitting its revenue targets. So, we think that, of course, there's going to be a time when Super Photonics will go public on the Star exchange in China at very, very good valuations. And that just directly translates to, benefit to POET. So we've already, in fact, been approached by folks, who see the potential of that potential IPO, I would say, to, buy out some of our shares and equity shares in the company. So
wow, that's pretty
Super
dramatic.
Photonics is Super Photonics is very strategic for a number of reasons. One is, of course, proliferating our technology and ensuring that there's market acceptance for it. It is access to the China market, right, which we otherwise would not have been able to access. It's, providing a non-dilutive value to the company because of the very nature of the valuation structures in China and our ability to potentially liquidate some of our equity stake, to promote the kind of growth that we want to do on the POET side. So, I know it's a complex story, but I mean, strategically, it makes a lot of sense for us. And we're really happy that we are at the point where we are at with the joint venture and the revenue trajectory associated with that, as well as the trajectory that we can engender on the POET side.
And I think that news, probably the first time a lot of our audience has heard it, that POET has actually there's such interest in the super photonics that that's got to be validation for you. That's got to be exciting news for everyone in the company, right?
Oh yeah, that's great. I mean, look, obviously the thing about China, especially in this space, is they love tech and they obviously value it a lot. And especially as that tech comes closer to maturation and, scale, then it becomes, I think they recognize the value. So it's not that we're out and about and looking. So, I think it's good to know that there are players, PEs, that are willing to come in and be part of the story. And so we just kind of nurture these relationships. But so when the time comes, that value, tapping into that value is clearly an option for us.
Great. And going from China over to Europe, what is the status of the relationship with the leading European optical systems company for the 400G data center application mentioned in a previous release in September 2020, I believe?
Yeah, we're working really closely together. I mean, we've completed the designs. The designs are running in the fab. We'll get wafers back in January. And, we've grown this relationship. So it's, a couple of different product lines, 2 different opportunities, CWDM4 as well as LR4. And we're executing our plans. Obviously this customer is committed. We've got advanced POs for the product. Their customers are excited about the products that we're building. So that part of the relationship's going well, right? I wish we could convert a lot of the other deals we've got going as quickly, so we can go execute the plans there. But this is going really well.
Terrific. And the North American Tier 1 partner, any updates you can give us on the working status with them? I think it was mentioned that there were discussions aimed at products to be designed, qualified, and incorporated into that customer's product portfolio.
Yeah, we're still engaged. So, back in 2020, we kind of finished this technology validation demonstration of our capabilities. There were several discussions around what kind of product one might design in with the customer. They have their own incumbent technologies, of course, just like, a lot of other people. They're heavily invested in a certain way of doing things with silicon photonics, et cetera. So at the end of the day, a product was defined, but we didn't have what needed to be delivered for that particular product at that point in time. So we've designed it now. And, in Q1, we should be in a position to have products that meet that specification that was defined, and then we would compete. Obviously there are others that are servicing that market and that space today. Was one of the reasons we also did the deal we just announced a couple of months ago on the other supplier for the lasers. So, there were 2 things that we didn't have. One was, the laser that met the actual specifications that were required. Prior to that, we were building our lasers at dense light, didn't meet the requirements that was needed for that particular application. So we've worked with Alme, and now we've got a deal with another supplier. So that kind of solves that hole on the laser side. There were some unique filter designs that were required for the particular application, and we've gone through our couple of learning cycles. So we're doing this in parallel with all of our other activities. So we're not really just focused only on this. But, we're keeping the dialogue going. We're providing status updates. And, when we think we're ready with a value engineered product, then we will re-engage. But at this point in time, we're still in the development phase of the product that had been defined back in 2020.
Okay, great. And now we're going to shift gears. We're going to talk to you about some competitors. There's a question, and this question is actually coming from investor Jamie Sharp, who's a sharp guy, and he's here in British Columbia. And I know everyone in POET is concerned for the folks in British Columbia with the disastrous flooding happening here. But to Jamie's question, he's asking, how does the Optical Interposer's optical engine compare against other optical engines? So he's saying many of these players players use the same catchphrases that Poet does. Ayar Labs, for example, claims they're enabling the next phase of Moore's Law by leveraging high-volume packaging and semiconductor partners. Are these apples-to-apples comparisons, as far as you know, or does Poet have superior technology?
Yeah, I'm not 100% familiar. I mean, Renovus, I first got exposed to them in 2015 when I joined Poet, right? So they're about 6 years long in the tooth as well. I haven't seen, I mean, I think the last I checked, they're kind of moving into the coherent space. Ayar Labs, I'm familiar with, of course, they're, pushing for, photonics computing, kind of end system applications. Look, everyone always thinks their invention or product is superior. Obviously, these are private companies and, they're in a different space from that perspective compared to Poet, which is a public venture. They have access to different pools of capital, and we have access to a different pool of capital. So between the technology and the companies, we're different. Third parties will ultimately decide. Although what Poet's doing is, we're in the data communications data center market. Our technology is adaptable, of course, to co-packaged optics applications, and we've got, an engagement on the artificial intelligence space to do that. Ayar Labs is doing, photonics computations using kind of a silicon photonics approach. Which one's going to win out? It's really hard for me to predict. All I can say is we've got a great technology platform. We've got a roadmap with 3D packaging that is truly unique. And the nice thing about what Poet does is it's a very simple platform. It's easy to understand for the folks that we're presenting it to. There's no complexity. It's simple to manufacture. And so we do think that we've got a great capability, and it's just going to take some time to develop it completely. But I think we're going to ultimately win out. I think we'll see. Look, there's so many competing options in the market, right? We're one of them, and we're in the conversation with the big guys, just like everybody else might be in the conversation. I think as we get the first product out and ramped, then I do believe that the impact of that is going to be significant in terms of saying, okay, now I can plan a roadmap around you guys because you've got the first one under your belt. And so it's really important that we do that. And so I just, while I would love to constantly think about, doing everything that I need for the future, we got to take care of the present and then build our way up to where we think we can get to. But in terms of patents and ideas, we've got so many new ideas that are in the pipeline to be patented, especially as we get to 3.2 terabits co-packaged optics area with the packaging capabilities of our interposer. So I'm pretty excited about what we think we can do, and we just got to keep the focus and deliver.
Yeah, and obviously a lot of execution is already happening. Here's a question talking about specifically the sensing wearables and medical devices. How does Poet compete? The questioner says Rockley Photonics. Obviously, Rockley isn't the only one in that space.
Yeah, I mean, Rockley, again, a very different company. They raised almost $400 million, during the development phase. They set up a joint venture with Engtong, who is one of the people that we talk to routinely. So they've kind of pivoted, right? So they've kind of moved away from data communications, and almost 100% of their focus now is on medical. Poet fundamentally has a similar technology platform as Rockley. So it's, if they can do something in the medical space, I think our platform can do it equally well or better. And so we're looking at that. We have had some discussions with folks in China, particularly very, very large smart watch type people. And we're exploring some options in that space as well. But again, I think we need to be careful that we don't really, get too thin in our development resources. So, we really feel like we've got to get the datacom done, which is something Rockley wasn't very successful in doing. I mean, I think they first had a plan to do 100 gig, didn't happen. 200 didn't happen. 400 still hasn't happened, right? And it's about 6 or 7 years. So, given that we have actually translated our ideas into something that can, in fact, go into production, gives our platform a little bit more credibility in terms of being adaptable to the multiple verticals that we want to go after. So that's really, our story. That's the plan.
It's terrific to be able to say that story so effectively and really make that comparison. So in a way it's apples to apples, but you're that much further ahead in that space with your devices. Regarding the 800G continuous wave laser patent, what makes it a seminal patent? I think that was your word that you used to describe it, a seminal patent for POET. And does the patent apply to speeds greater than 800?
Yeah, actually, I mean, I used 800 because, that's where we believe we can apply the patent itself. I mean, I call it seminal because seminal is something groundbreaking, which we think it is. So, the patent's really about athermal lasers. I mean, typically lasers, move with temperature, the wavelength shifts, and it requires cooling. And we figured out a way to, use the interposer to be able to make these lasers that are largely athermal in their characteristics that we think would be of terrific advantage in not just 800 gig, but also coherent, and so, we continue to develop that capability. I think that would be something that would be part of our activity for development in 2022. And as we kind of march our way up the roadmap to 800 gig. But yeah, I call it seminal because I think it's foundational, and it's disruptive in its nature, which basically makes it seminal.
We're going to change gears a little bit and turn to talking about the plan for the NASDAQ listing. What is the share price you hope to uplist at? That's a tricky one, I think. And I think that question is probably related to the planned consolidation that POET has received approval for from the shareholders. So, what share price would you like to be at before that consolidation is announced?
Yeah, look, it's I don't want to speculate on share price. It really doesn't make sense for me to do it. I mean, of course, we would love for it to go up to the moon, right? We believe, we're deeply undervalued now, and it's been difficult to see what's transpired over the past several months. The issue related to share price and the consolidation ratio is, if you're going to move to the NASDAQ, well, why are we doing that? I mean, we're doing that to gain access to high quality institutions and investors, take a long-term view of the company, and, to provide more liquidity to all the shareholders, to provide more value to all the shareholders. And really, I mean, it's where the big tech companies are, and we've got to do it. But if you're going to do that, and you also want to make sure that you are accessing as many of the institutional investors, and several of them can't invest in stocks less than $5. I mean, even their brokers are prohibited from soliciting orders from retail clients, right, for such stocks. So we don't want to be in that position, having made the move, and artificially limit the type of investor. So we would like to break that $5 per share barrier, but obviously we also don't want to do it with a terrible consolidation ratio. So, obviously we formed a committee, of the board. We're going to be looking at it and reviewing the situation and determining what the right timing would be, the right consolidation ratio would be. I think it's a balance, and we just go through the process.
Yeah, careful steps. It's a time for caution regarding that. You don't want to make any missteps along that road. Perhaps something that can help is the $300 million shelf prospectus that can be used over the next 18 months or so. That can you can access that for capital for acquisitions or joint ventures. Is there a plan for that spending?
Well, I mean, our space, it pays to have maximum flexibility, right? So that's what the shelf is about. Nothing imminent, but yeah, we just want to have the flexibility to be able to use the shelf if we need to.
Great. And here's a question I'm excited about. With $24 million in the bank, will the company be spending more on marketing to help increase visibility in the U.S. market?
Yeah, we are undertaking, website redesign. I think we're kind of old in the tooth as it relates to that. I think we've made so much progress as a company, and so we're hiring a branding firm to help us get a little bit more strategic in our marketing, as well as brand our products better than just calling it, the POET Optical Interposer. We're likely to create more content, for our YouTube channel. We'll probably do something new at the OFC in March. And honestly, I might, start attending more conferences. That's one of the things that I was doing earlier and then kind of just stopped. And then the pandemic hit. So I believe, going out there, at the conferences, interacting with people and providing a lot more visibility to POET overall. I think we started that at the CIOE, where Mo represented us to very high acclaim, at the CIOE conference. And I think, we'll obviously do a lot more of that as well going forward.
Yeah, and that's Dr. Mo Jinyu. She's a brilliant part of the POET team and based in Shenzhen. Talking again about spending, like almost every tech company in the early growth stage, POET isn't going to be turning a profit right away because a lot of the spending is just going to get put back into the company. Can you elaborate on the plans for the company's capex spending, short term anyway?
Yeah, I mean, I think we have immediate plans, for 2022. It's primarily around, as you can imagine, manufacturing and scale. So there's equipment that we've got to consign at Silterra. We'll be, spending some money on that, as well as, some unique. We got a really good deal on some wafer processing capability that we will be putting in Singapore. We've also been able to leverage, like I said, the Singapore government for a lot of capex. And so they will be putting that capex in as part of this hybrid integration center we're putting in place. So that has helped really, minimize the out-of-pocket capex for POET. But yeah, we will be spending on the order of about $2 to $3 million in capex in this coming year. Primarily to kind of ready us for the manufacturing ramp next year.
Okay. Question on finance, the financial part of the company. Can you explain why there's the need to keep the options pool at 20%?
Look, first of all, the last thing I want to do, or anyone in the company wants to do, right, is to take any action that would be a hindrance to our investors' gains. Right, that does not. I mean, our mission is to increase shareholder value. We always want to do what's in your interests, right? And actually having that options pool available to us as an asset, we can use it to attract talent. Especially today. I mean, I don't know whether you guys have experienced, right? But there's an intense fight for talent right now. There is a dearth of talent in almost every engineering discipline globally. And, it's impossible for a small company like ours to go attract the best talent without having, the capability to be able to provide stock options, et cetera. That's, and then maintain a low burn rate as well in the industry. So engineers are in higher demand than ever today, right? And the key reason we're still hiring, we're bringing in. I mean, we got a new person joined Allentown last week. We got a new person joined POET Singapore this week on product engineering. We can bring them in because we are able to demonstrate the potential that the company has in front of us. They know that if we win, they win. And it's an important part of our compensation plan. So, we want to be able to have that flexibility, and so while there is a lot of emotion around it, it's an important part of the company's growth to attract the best talent.
Yeah, and the shareholders have obviously supported the option plan because it's gotten approval at the AGM. Here's a question that's a good way to end off the Reddit group's questions. What is the next big step in POET's evolution?
Look, I mean, I believe, and I've said this publicly to many people, including potential customers, that we have a very unique integration platform. I mean, we're the only platform in the world that can integrate DML lasers the way we do, and we're leveraging it for 100, 200 CWDM4. We're leveraging it for 100 LR4. Our stated path, right, is to obviously at 400 gig is to use silicon photonics modulators and the CW laser, and we're doing that, but we're also considering just extending our DML roadmap to 400 gig, which means, we already have the photo detectors and the receive on that done completed. And so if we can work with getting access to a, higher speed laser, then this DML platform becomes extremely viable at 400 gig, right? It'd be really disruptive. So we're working on a few things, but the next big step in our evolution is to really mature this DML platform that we have, which we believe is very unique in the world, and get it into the state of manufacturing, and then look to further expand the frequency and data rates of that platform to also support 400 to 800. So we're taking a two-step approach to 400 gig. We've got our kind of one step on the CW laser modulator, but we're now starting to look at, hey, we've got this platform, nobody else does. It's working really, really well at 100, 200. How about we can just extend this to 400? Then, do we get a really quick slingshot, if you will, into that market with something super differentiated? So we're looking at that, more to come, right? Watch this page.
Always thinking, always innovating. That's so fabulous. I think that's why people are so confident to have you at the head of this company, Suresh. So finally, a question from me. It's U.S. Thanksgiving. I believe you're in California. What are you thankful for?
Oh, wow. Hey, look, on the personal side, family and great friends all over the world, good health, right? Good wines. And, I think on the business side, I'm, really thankful to the team, right? They are so committed. Several of them have left good jobs to join us because we share a vision, we share a strategy. And it's been great interacting with them, working with them. Several of them I hadn't seen in a couple of years. So it's been great meeting them. So I'm thankful for that. And you know what? I'm thankful for, having the resiliency to, do what we have to do with this company, pivot it, give it a new direction, give it a new strategy, execute on that strategy, and, continue to make progress towards getting products in the hands of customers, products that they really need and want, and having that resiliency in the company to be able to do that, I think is also terrific. So yeah, lot to be thankful for.
Okay, well, Suresh, I predict there will be a lot of fine wine coming your way from happy shareholders when we're all able to gather together again. So that's our CEO Q&A. A final word from me. I've been with POET in an official role now for 3 months. What I can tell you is everyone in the company who I've interacted with is working incredibly hard to bring this technology to the market as quickly as possible. I particularly commend Suresh for how much he's putting into the enterprise and how hard he's working and remaining humble and calm. If you're an investor, I can tell you that there are good people in this company and they're working tirelessly to get POET to the next level. You heard of the progress today. Some key highlights that I think will excite the Reddit community. The $600 million LR4 market is there for the taking, and POET likely does not have viable competition in the LR4 space. The Singapore team is working 2 shifts per day, 7 days a week, engineering nearly around the clock for meeting customer requests and developing designs. And POET's joint venture with Sanan IC is coming along so well Exciting things happening, including this Q&A. It's rare for a CEO to take this kind of time to communicate with investors. So thank you again, Suresh. Happy Thanksgiving to you and to your family and to all of those celebrating in the US.
Thank you, Adrian. Appreciate the opportunity, and happy Thanksgiving to all of you as well who are going to be watching this video.